Hello, my name is Andrew de Blocq. I work for BirdLife South Africa, and this virtual workshop will be focusing on our project, which we've just started, called Developing the Garden Route in Klein Karoo as an Avitourism destination. So these are the organizations that are involved in running this project. So I mentioned I'm from BirdLife, and I will introduce them shortly. Our main funder is the Western Cape Government's Economic Development and Tourism arm. It was through a call for the Growth for Jobs Tourism Challenge Fund that we were able to find funding for this project. So thank you to them for partnering with us on that. We also have a co-funder and partner, the Karoo Cluster Biosphere Reserve. So thank you to Linda and Steve and the team over there for also partnering with us on this. They have a presence through a large part of the Garden Route district, so important local partners. And then lastly, my co-host for this workshop is Roland Forwerk from In Toto. They have a retreat on the island in Sedgefield, and Roland also has a long history working in government and other spheres on tourism issues. Roland, would you like to quickly just show everyone your face and say hi and introduce yourself briefly?
Greetings. Is my video showing?
Yes, we can see you.
Hi all, and greetings from representing In Toto Garden Route, but also just really excited to be working with Andrew on bringing this project to the Garden Route in Klein Karoo. Look forward to engaging on this call, and also hopefully to be involved with all of you in the other outputs that we have lined up. So thanks for that, Andrew, and I'll have a few words a bit later.
Great, thanks, Roland. Great to be partnering with you on this. So just in terms of what we're going to go through today, so this is our virtual workshop. We had 7 in-person workshops last week along the Garden Route. But thank you for joining us. I hope you all feel welcome. I'm going to introduce you to BirdLife South Africa and the theme of Avitourism. It'll be a new idea for some of you. Some of you are old hats. Then we're going to outline our project. I'll hand over to Roland for a couple of words once I'm finished. And then we'll hopefully get some feedback from the rest of you. It's going to be a bit difficult given that we only have a Q&A box and a chat box to deal with. Unfortunately, you're not able to unmute yourselves and engage with your voices, but you are able to with your keyboards. So at any point during the presentation or presentations, if you do have a question, I'm just going to ask you to put those in the Q&A box. And that will help us to keep track of what people would still like to find out. And then we'll close after that. Okay, so I mentioned I work for BirdLife South Africa. For those of you that aren't familiar with us, BirdLife South Africa is a conservation NGO. We are mandated with the conservation of South Africa's birds and their habitats. This is our team at our annual staff meeting in Wakkerstroom. We have a different venue every year, but this is our staff complement of about 35. In this group of people, there's about 13 PhDs, of which I'm not one of, but a very well qualified, very motivated and skilled team that are committed to this cause. We have our offices here in Johannesburg. That's where I'm tuning in from, by the way. It's where I'm based, although I do happen to travel a fair amount. And then we've recently opened an office in Cape Town, which houses our seabird team and some of our estuaries team and others. And then there are several other staff, satellite staff, that are stationed around the country. Our only staff member in the Garden Route is Sam Ralston-Payton. She's our renewable energy specialist, and she's based in Van Wyksdorp. If you can see my cursor, here's Sam over here. Not looking all that happy. I don't think she's a big fan of photographs, but she is based in Van Wyksdorp. So Nikki, maybe you'd like to make contact and chat to Sam about her work as well. Really fascinating stuff that Sam gets up to. So that's our organization. We were established in 1996, so we have nearly 30 years of track record. And we basically, I think we can say, are the leaders in conservation of birds and their habitats in South Africa and regionally. We work with a lot of our partners in Southern Africa and into the rest of Africa, and even along the migratory flyways as well. The Empowering People program I'm going to introduce shortly uses birds as a tool to upskill people, diversify livelihoods, and create jobs. So we all recognize that conservation can't exist without people, and people will also not care about anything or conserve it without first being aware of it and falling in love with it. So that's the twin objectives of the Empowering People program. And my Avitourism project falls within that. So it's not about taking people on tours. It's not about making profits out of tourism. My position is entirely unique in that it is catalytic in nature. I can be strategic about where I inject myself for the most impact, basically just to develop the Avitourism economy and all the services and suppliers and communities that underline that. So this is our structure as BirdLife South Africa. On the left-hand side here, on our conservation division organogram, you have the 3 conservation projects. So that's seabird conservation, landscape conservation, and species conservation. On the right-hand side, our supporting programs, working from the outside in policy and advocacy, dealing with the legal aspects of conservation, things like environmental impact assessments for development and others, science and innovation, which gives us the research tools and the data with which to make conservation decisions. And then regional conservation. I mentioned we work outside of our borders. So that is our regional conservation team that work with our partners. BirdLife South Africa, by the way, is the country partner in the BirdLife International family, which is a partnership of over 115 organizations worldwide committed to conserving birds and their habitats. So a very strong conservation partnership, and we work with those partners wherever possible. Then sandwiched in the middle here is our Empowering People program. And I explained that this is stemming from the recognition that people need to be central to conservation, and we need people to care about birds in order for us to have our work be sustainable in the long term. And we can also use birds as a tool to empower people and to give value to birds and their habitats for local communities. So that's essentially the context in which we're working. The Avitourism project within BirdLife South Africa has a number of sub-projects, I guess you could call them, although I guess they are projects on their own. I oversee a portfolio of different projects. I'll just go through some of them now. The Community Bird Guide project is a very long-standing project. It's over 25 years old. I've only been active on the project for just over 3 years, but it has, in those 25 years, trained about 250 people to be professional bird and nature guides, all sourced from disadvantaged, underprivileged communities, especially in rural areas, wherever there are birding hotspots. So they are typically in the northeast of the country. We're desperate to get a foothold in the Western Cape because there's very fertile ground for community-based guides, but we haven't quite got there yet. We're hoping that this project will be a launch pad for that in the Western Cape. I'll explain the guide training model that we're using. It's not our community guide model for this project, given time and budget restraints, but it is something we're hoping to implement very soon. Then the South Africa Listers Club is a way that we get people excited about South Africa's birds and getting out birding. So most people will be aware your field guides, your Robert Sassel, etc., generally cover Southern Africa. And as a result, a lot of people keep Southern African lists. But we, being the custodians of South Africa's birds, felt that there's enough diversity. In fact, about 95% of the birds in Southern Africa can actually be found in South Africa, that we should start a Listers Club for the country. So that's where this started. We now have over 600 members, part of the Listers Club for South Africa. And we encourage people through this club to celebrate South Africa's birds and to get out there and experience our natural heritage. Then there's the Go Birding website, which I'll do a live demo of just now when I get to it. But it's essentially the map on the right-hand side. It's the one-stop shop of birding in South Africa. It's the premier tool for people wanting to plan their trips. So each of the, well, I'll explain all the pins just now, but what you basically need to know is that it houses all of our recommended accommodations, all of our birding sites, over 400 of them countrywide, and then our bird clubs, tour operators, and bird guides. But as I said, I'll give you more in-depth coverage of that just now. Then there's SANSAB, which is short for South African Names for South African Birds project. This is a rather novel project, which is a little bit tangential to what we're hoping to do in the garden route, but nevertheless, I think people like to hear about. So it may surprise some of you that until last year, we only had full lists of South Africa's birds in English and Afrikaans. None of the other 12 official languages had a full list. There were large gaps. This is, I guess, understandable given that a Zulu speaker might not have encountered a Cape Rock jumper during the formation of the language, but of course people travel much wider and we're a much more cosmopolitan society. And we also want people to be able to talk about birds in their home languages. Talking to a kid in a rural school in KwaZulu-Natal about Cape Gannet in Zulu just doesn't have the same effect as Isitqibamanzi, which is the new name, means spear into the water, which for those of you that know gannets makes a lot of sense. So we took on this project built on previous work by professors at UKZN to give names to all of KwaZulu-Natal's birds in Zulu. And we've now worked with academics and linguists and ethnic Zulu birders that have all fed into this process. And we now have a full list of birds in Zulu for the first time. And we're in the process of translating an app into Zulu that people can now go birding fully in Zulu for the first time. And we're hoping to expand this to Xhosa, Sesotho, Sepedi next. Then there's our marketing and development side, which is a catch-all really for the rest of my job. Basically just to promote South Africa as a birding destination and promote birding as a hobby, both locally and with international marketing as well. I write lots of articles, I do lots of webinars and talks, I visit lots of bird clubs, and through the Go Birding site as well, just hope to develop this whole economy in South Africa for this niche tourism sector that we all love. We also have our African BirdLife magazine, which we'll be using as a tool in this project. It's a magazine that goes out to all of our subscribers and all of our members, and it goes out to all the major retail outlets as well. It's a fantastic publication on birds and birding, the best on the continent, and definitely competes worldwide as well. So yeah, we have also several events that we run. The National Birding Big Day is one, the African Bird Fair is another. So yes, we're just generally involved in promoting birds and birding in South Africa. So what is Avitourism? I mentioned I'm in charge of the Avitourism project. So in essence, it's about traveling to view birds in their natural habitat. It's a well-established niche worldwide. When I say niche, people often think that means that there are very few people that do this. That's not what it means. It just means special interest. So I say it is well established. It's considered the fastest growing hobby worldwide. There's some stats to back that up, apparently, especially in the Western world. It does skew towards an older, wealthier demographic. It's not entirely true of all aspects of birding. Certainly locally, there's a groundswell of young people interested in birds and birding and nature more broadly, but international travelers to South Africa certainly do skew towards that close to retirement or post-retirement age, but that makes them a very lucrative demographic for tourism managers. So I'll speak a bit more to that in a South African context just now. And lastly, it just on the general sense intersects very well with other forms of tourism. And in South Africa, we are very blessed with a well-established tourism sector. Some of the benefits of Avitourism are local community benefits, if this is done correctly, and it's something that BirdLife South Africa is pioneering in this space. There are significant jobs and revenue that can trickle down through Avitourism development, directly and indirectly. So yeah, as I say, can be local communities involved. It's something we're hoping to do more of in future iterations of this project. There can be significant conservation benefit. So in a very tangible sense, raising funds for conservation through tourism, that's a pretty well-established practice, from just taking people into parks and paying their admission fees through to having organized tourism events that are specifically fundraising for conservation purposes. Infrastructure development usually comes with Avitourism. So infrastructure like trails, hides, boardwalks, etc., very popular with birders and give you a good reason to maintain those. Tourism diversification is certainly something that Avitourism plays a role in. Those of you who are birders will know one of the most fantastic things about birding is that no matter where you go, there are birds. And a lot of people who are guides can benefit a lot from knowing their local birds, because there will always be something to say. If you can spot a bird and talk about it, there will never be a dull moment on your tours. So that's just one of the ways that we can add Avitourism as this rich layer on top of, the other diversified offering that we can give people. And there certainly is a beautifully diverse offering of tourism on the Garden Route and in the Klein Karoo. And then lastly, it's just a very eco-friendly and low impact form of tourism, as opposed to others that require a lot of development and invasive infrastructure and putting in new roads and things like that. Generally, every tourists are in small groups. They're generally conscious of their effect on the environment. They're not creating a lot of noise or disturbance to the area. So it's definitely a low impact form of tourism. So Avitourism in South Africa, if we start to narrow our lens a little bit, is spectacular. In a countrywide sense, we have 900 bird species, or just under. I think the latest tally is 880 species. We seem to be adding a couple every single year with new birds that pitch up and are discovered, or splits, taxonomic splits of species that we thought was one and turns out to be two or three. Happens occasionally. Just to put that in context, that's about 8% of the world's total biodiversity, well, diversity of birds, which, if you consider we're one country at the foot of Africa, and we're competing with the likes of the neotropics and Southeast Asia with those tropical rainforests, to have 8% of the world's diversity is incredible, and we are the envy of many countries. Another reason we're the envy of many countries is our endemic species. So endemic means that it's not found anywhere else. We have 69 species that are endemic or near endemic to South Africa. Near endemic just means that at least 70% of the population is found here, although it might be shared with neighboring countries. So in South Africa, we have the unique situation of the Kingdom of Lesotho. So of course, there's a fair overlap with species into there, and then obviously into our other neighboring countries as well. But 69 species is pretty incredible. We also have 2 near endemic families of birds. So to have endemism at the level of families is fairly rare for a single country. But we have the rock jumpers and the sugar birds. So in the Garden Route district, which is, I'll refer to Garden Route district, it just means Klein Karoo and Garden Route, they're both present and will be large attractants for international visitors. We have very well developed ecotourism in South Africa, which means we can plug into that infrastructure and economy and add that layer of diversity as well. We have a very mature market and profile for South Africa, internationally and domestically. We're very well known for birding already as a country. One of the reasons for this is that 2 of the 3 biggest birding specialist tour operators were founded by South Africans. So they've really gone out of their way to put South Africa on the map and bring people back to their home country. And then lastly, it's just an incredibly valuable tourism niche, which has been identified by the government through a series of reports done, or reviews done in 2010, published in 2010 by the Department of Trade and Industry. The reason they were overseeing this was the Department of Tourism wasn't yet around, but the DTI estimated the value in 2010 of Avitourism to the economy being around 2.25 billion, which in today's terms is about 4.5 billion. So, although it's very niche, and this has a significant contribution to our local economy, this is, I think, an underestimate at this point. We've seen a huge growth in Avitourism and in birding as a hobby in South Africa. One of the silver linings of the COVID pandemic was actually people becoming connected to the birds in their garden and then carrying that interest through into their travels and activities once lockdowns had eased. Perhaps the most important and eyebrow-raising finding of that report was that among all the different niches that were studied by the DTI, and that included things like geotourism, culinary tourism, cultural tourism, etc., Avitourists traveled the furthest, stayed the longest, and spent the most of any of the other tourists that were investigated. So that makes them incredibly valuable to the tourism economy as a whole, and definitely a priority segment for the government. So the Garden Route district is the area in which we are working. You will see the map on your screens now. It's bordered in the east by obviously the Eastern Cape, on the north essentially by the Swartberg Mountains, and then in the west by the Overberg district. So that's essentially the area that we're focusing on. I'll say a couple of times throughout the presentation that Although we do have to report on our impact in this district, there are significant opportunities in this project for people outside of this district to benefit, for example, through our guide training. We also we're welcoming of people who are tour guides, for instance, outside of this district, but might be operating into this district at times to be a part of this project. So yeah, just to say that this is not exclusive at all to people outside of the district. Avitourism in this district is not very well known or established, which is basically the context in which we are coming into this project, and we want to develop that. Despite that, it has incredible assets for avitourism. Just in terms of the diversity of birds, there's been about 450 species identified. You'll remember I said there were 880 species in total in South Africa. So over half of the country's birds can be found in the Garden Route district through the Klein, Karoo and Garden Route. So that just gives you an idea of how spectacular the birding is. That includes quite a number of the country's endemics. So definitely an attractive destination, just people don't really know about it. Obviously, the diversity of birds is influenced and I guess amplified by the diversity of habitats available in the Garden Route. And just judging by my virtual background, you will hopefully agree that everything from the coast to the depths of the Klein, Karoo and the Swartberg and everything in between, from forests, estuaries, fresh water, even the deep sea, grasslands, agricultural, urban areas, fynbos, renosterveld, it all contributes to the diversity of the birds that we see inhabiting each of these habitats. The district has incredible scenic and ecotourism already established. It's some of the most beautiful parts of the country, and again, very stark and diverse range of scenic areas to explore. And this means that we have a very fertile ground to, again, add that layer of birding tourism to that. There are a number of tourists already visiting the area, and we can make or take advantage of that for the development of avitourism. There are access points for tourists, which is obviously always important. The airports in Cape Town and Gqeberha or PE are obvious ones, but then George as well is a significant conduit for people accessing the area by air. And then, of course, there are very good road networks extending through the area, so it's easy to travel for tourists. And just lastly, as I mentioned, it's not very well marketed as a birding destination. It's not very well known. And this comes on a supply and demand side. So service providers on the ground need to be aware of the opportunities and market the area. Please excuse the dog next door. They need to be able to say to tourists what the opportunities are and where they might like to take their guests and what they might be able to see. And on the demand side, people need to be aware that they need to be on the lookout for birding in this area. I don't think people realize the diversity that they have in the area. Someone might want to explore the Western Cape's birds based out of Cape Town, but they'll have to travel a long way into the Tankwa Karoo, up the west coast, into the Overberg on these long day or 2-day trips. Whereas if you based yourself somewhere centrally in the Garden Route district, you could do all of this and more, basically in a much shorter time span and a much shorter distance from your base. So it's a fantastic area for birding and deserves better. So what does the spread of avitourism look like in the Garden Route district? So this is taken from the Go Birding website, and I will pause shortly just to take you through a live demonstration of that. But this is what it looks like. So just to give you some context, the blue pins are birding sites, green pins are accommodations, red pins are community guides, of which there are none in the Western Cape, as I mentioned. Yellow are tour operators, and black are bird clubs. So you'll see if this is roughly the Garden Route district from Still Bay to Ladysmith, across the top of the Swartberg, and then down via Uniondale, down to Nature's Valley area. This is the district that we're working in. There's fairly well covered areas on the coastal corridor, I guess you could call it, on the side of the Langeberg. So lots of birding sites noted all the way along here. But then there is a huge gap basically in this corridor from Still Bay northwards to Ladysmith, and then right all the way through Oudtshoorn, De Rust to Uniondale. Basically no coverage at all. So this is something that we're hoping to fix, and I'll get to that in a second. There's also very few service providers. So we basically have the retreat at Groenfontein. So Leila, nice to have you with us. You are standing alone here in the Klein Karoo. And then Roland's in Toto retreat in Sedgefield is the lone accommodation on the coastal area of the district. So this is something we definitely want to increase. It's not a case of creating competition among different service providers. The more service providers there are, the more of a range is offered to the clients. And as someone said in the workshops, the bigger the cake, the bigger the slice everyone gets. So the idea is to put the place on the map, essentially, and in literal and figurative terms. And the more activity that people see around the area, the more likely they are to investigate and consider, coming to visit. So this is the whole idea. I'll quickly pause now to take you through how the site works. Just for information, here are the web links. So either gobirding.co.za or gobirding.birdlife.org.za. I prefer just to give people the .coza site. So if we just go out of that quickly, and I bring up the Go Birding website. So you should be able to see it here. This is the Go Birding website. As I mentioned, gobirding.co.za or gobirding.birdlife.org.za. Here's a little bit of information, but the main feature of the site is this map, this birding map. Of the different sites across the country and the different service providers. So if the idea is, if you're a tourist visiting the garden route, you will zoom in here and decide, well, I'm planning my trip. I want to decide where to go birding. What are the options? So if there isn't an option around Ladysmith, you're not likely to visit Ladysmith. But if you go into, for example, Plettenberg Bay, and you zoom in and you say you're staying out Kerboomstrandway and you want to find out what the opportunities are, you might click around and find different spots. So here is the B2 wetlands and Kerbooms River. It gives you a little bit of information here, a bit of a teaser. If that sounds good to you, you will click the click here button, which will take you away to the dedicated web page. This will give you some photographs of the site, some key species, contact details if those are relevant, a downloadable checklist. So every single site has a downloadable checklist that is generated using the Atlas data. We can also add other photographs or other documents, for example, maps or that kind of thing here as separate buttons. Then if you scroll down, there's paragraphs on the birding information for the site down to GPS, data level, just describing what you might see, how to go about birding at the site. Lots of information, as you'll see. An opportunity to talk about the birding site, so that'll cover your habitats, your histories, any other notable points about the site, and then other related information. So that could be your local guides, your directions, your opening hours, your admission fees, your wheelchair accessibility, etc., etc. So each of those pins on this Go Birding map has its own web page. A lot of them are missing photographs. For instance, this Reed Flare Dam, if we go and look at this site, we're missing a photograph. So this is one of the updates we're hoping to do for the garden route area. But again, you see the depth of information available for each separate site. Then if we wanted to say, well, who the local birders, this is the bird club, so BirdLife Plettenberg Bay. Again, if you click on the more information button, it'll take you away to their site. They have some photographs, their logo, contact details, their meeting venue, a little bit about the club, its admission fees, etc., or membership fees, sorry. And lastly, I'll just show you what an accommodation looks like. I always show Roland's. Maybe we'll do the retreat at Groenfontein as well and see what that looks like. But this is in Toto's page, just showing their wonderful surrounds and their wonderful spot, their contact details, social media, some information about the accommodation. And why not, since we've got Layla on the call, let's go and look at the retreat at Groenfontein, which is really a really beautiful spot. Here we go. So there's a photograph of their spot, their contact information, a little bit of information about their accommodation and what activities you can do while you're there. So these can always be updated. It's a live website. We don't charge for birding sites to be added. We want to get as many as possible, but we do charge for accommodations and guides, just because there are commercial opportunities, and also we have to raise funds to administrate the site. It comes with a whole lot of benefits: membership with BirdLife South Africa, subscription to our magazine, etc. But there is an annual fee of 2,195 Rand, which is not designed to fleece you out of your money. You're supposed to get your money back in a booking or two, but really is your ticket onto the Go Birding platform. So with that said, I'll go back to my presentation now and just share that with you, and we'll finish off and we can ask some questions at the end. So what are we hoping to do in our project? So our title is Developing the Garden Route in Klein Karoo as an Avitourism destination. Our objectives here are to identify stakeholders in projects, increase awareness of services and suppliers on the ground, enhance the market profile, and build the local guiding and general tourism services, create new market awareness, and to create appetite and generate funds for future work. So our project, as you'll see, runs until March next year. We have limited timelines and budgets, but we're hoping to get the ball rolling and have plans to free up new funding for investment in this area and in others. So this is really a proof of concept, a bit of a pilot phase of what we hope will be an extended investment in Avitourism in this district and neighboring areas. So what are we hoping to achieve? Well, we've basically outlined 6 different outputs or deliverables for this project. The first of them I'm concluding right now is our series of Avitourism workshops. So last week, Roland and I, between Monday and Friday, visited Wilderness, Mossel Bay, Riversdale, Ladysmith, Oudtshoorn, Plettenberg Bay, and Knysna. So this is now the 8th time that I'm giving this presentation. We had wonderful feedback from everyone. The idea was to introduce the project and to get people on board, identify local stakeholders and future project champions, and just to relay the information and give people roadmaps of what we're hoping to do. This gives you an idea of who attended during the week last week. Roland put this together, but basically the blue or dark blue sector is local tourism officers and district tourism officers. So 13% of them were represented. The accommodations, the orange slice here, so about a third of them were representing different accommodations. Tour operators and activity operators, 6%, local tour guides, 3%, conservation organizations, a quarter of those. So it was actually really surprising, but also really valuable to have the conservation stakeholders interested in our tourism work. And then general members of the public. So these are just general birders or members of bird clubs that are interested in getting involved. And that was about 20% of our audience. So that's who attended. We had nearly 150 people attend our workshops last week. So yeah, really, really good turnout. Our second output is around enhancing the local profile of birding. So I mentioned the Go Birding site and all the missing spots. So we definitely want to fill those gaps. We've committed to the funders to have at least 15 new sites uploaded. This is likely to be well exceeded. I've already had a new site added this morning, and we are sending around the template for new sites to everyone who attends our webinars. So, well, our workshops rather. So you will get a copy of that. If there's a site that we feel that you feel needs to be added, you can add that information or ask a local birder to help you to populate that. So yes, 15 sites. We want to revise and update existing sites. I showed you, for example, sites without photographs. Some sites are missing contact details. There might be inaccuracies about the admission fees because it was done a little while ago. So the idea behind the site is that it's a live source of information. So we should be able to update it in live time. Then we also want to increase our service provider coverage. I will be sending around the links of how to become a service provider to everyone who attends. There's an online application process for guides and for accommodations. It's very easy to do. It's not a very high bar to clear. And then there is that annual membership fee to go with that. And the benefits package is outlined on the document I'll send around. And then lastly, we are having 4 double-page advertorials in the African BirdLife magazine. And the idea here is to promote the area as a birding destination and to highlight some of the new projects and people that we uncover as part of this intervention. Our third output then is guide training. This seems to be the one that most people are very excited about. We are offering a 10-session virtual training course on Avitourism and birding. The sessions will be an hour each every Monday and Thursday from the 30th of October to the 30th of November. So starting the end of next month. The course is open to pretty much anyone, but will be geared towards people who want to add birding, like I said, as that layer to their tourism offering. We're focusing on guides that are already in the system, so operating as tour guides or as aspirant guides. They can be cultural guides, nature guides, history guides. It doesn't matter. Anyone who's interested in adding birding to their portfolio is welcome. We have 500 spots available on the online training. So if you are a lodge manager, if you want your front of house staff to learn a bit more about birds and birding so that they can speak authentically to the guests, this is an opportunity for you to get free training. This is no cost at all to you to take part. Everyone who attends at least 50% of these courses will be eligible to book a guided experience at local sites. So one can book multiple as well, but essentially we'll be making experienced birders and bird guides available at a geographic spread of local sites throughout the district that these people can then learn from them on how to conduct a guided birding experience. So it's a sort of facilitated mentorship / experience that they can go into a local site that they may be actually guiding people at, see how an expert would do it, and then adapt that to their operations as well. And then through this whole process, just creating further networks and information sharing among these different service providers that will be trained. So that's quite an exciting one. Yeah, I think a lot of people are very keen to get involved, and not necessarily just guides. I think people who are just generally interested in birds but want to know more, they will enjoy these sessions. The fourth output is our essentially the in-situ guided experiences I mentioned for the guides, but we're doing it for other tourism stakeholders. So similar idea. The focus will be less on teaching people how to conduct a guided birding experience and more on just giving them that experience. The idea behind that is that you want your front-facing tourism staff, whether it's your lodge managers, your front of house staff, your hospitality staff, your local tourism officers, etc., that will at times talk to people about what they can do in the area. You want them to talk with authority and authenticity about birding as an option for their tourists. So we're making this opportunity available, again, free of charge to anyone who's interested. And hopefully this will feed through in terms of promoting birding and the guides that are trained as a tourism experience in the Garden Route district. The fifth output is a media tour. This will be towards the end of February with 6 media representatives from national, international, and local levels. They'll tour the area for 6 days. It'll be a jam-packed itinerary. We can't quite decide exactly what to include and what to exclude because there is so much to cover. But essentially, we want to showcase the birds of the area, the guides that we train, the accommodations, the different sites and experiences, and local projects as well. So we'll be visiting some of the local people on the ground and giving them different angles on stories to tell about birds and birding and avitourism in the Garden Route. Lastly, it'll be a report. So this is obviously we need to report to our funders on the progress of the project, but I think more importantly, we'll be submitting a report on what we outline as the best approach for future work. And Roland came with the suggestion of making this an actual costed outline of what to do. So actually getting specific projects together that we can then propose to future funders and future opportunities for funding. Something like building a bird hide on the Gokama River at Blackwaters Lodge, for instance, is one option. And that would then be costed. You would have your specs, your placement of the hide, basically packaged as a project ready to go. So not just a general, we should have bird hides along the estuaries of the rivers in the garden route, or we should build a boardwalk or information series that we can post in this hiking trail in the Klein Karoo. Specific ideas around, we should have signage for the Ladysmith birding routes, or we should have, bird hides or trails or whatever. So that's the idea behind Output 6 is getting that future work all packaged nicely and costed, so that we can take this back to the Western Cape government and to other funders and say, well, here are projects that we can run with. So this is our timeline or roadmap of what we're going to be doing. We're finishing our last information session now. We have already started with the new birding site uploads. We want to get those in as soon as possible, because the sooner they're up, the sooner people can access them, as well as the service providers as well. The sooner you're up on the site, the quicker we can start promoting you. Then the tour guide upskilling will be in October, November, December. So obviously 30th of October through to early December. The open days then will follow on in January and February after the crazy festive season. So probably starting mid-January into mid-February. The birding tourism open days is the one for the tourism stakeholders. We had originally put this in January, February, but upon reflection, I think we might move this to November, actually, just to get ahead of the crazy season, and it'll give people an opportunity immediately to start promoting birding in the area rather than missing this year's busy season. So yeah, we'll communicate about that separately. The media tour towards the end of February, just to give us time to get everything else in place and identify the right people to talk to. And then the report will be by the end of March for the end of the financial year for our funders. So how is this going to be implemented? It's being led by BirdLife South Africa. We have a strong partnership with In Toto Retreat through Roland, who's going to be our local representative on the ground in the district. I'll be traveling down a couple of times. Like I said, I was in the garden route last week. Sorry to miss you all. Then we'll have our local experts that will be appointed to inform certain outputs. So our guided experiences on the ground will be local people who we appoint to do that. And then all of you as local stakeholders, also project partners, you're able to give us feedback on exactly where we should be working, how we should be working, who we should be working with. So that's an important aspect. So obviously it's not all roses and rainbows, as exciting and positive as this all is. We do have limited budget and timelines to get things done. So we can only do so much in so much time. We are not able really through this to create new jobs. What we are able to do is diversify the people who are already in the sector and working. So we are at least able to do that, and hopefully in future iterations we'll be able to get involved with the job creation in local communities. Obviously the region competes with others for Avitourism, so we must not throw the baby out with the bathwater and just move entirely over to birding tourism. We need to find ways to weave this into existing attractions, and over time we will build up that profile of Avitourism in the garden route. So just to be mindful of that. And then we obviously need our local champions, and we need to have our local stakeholders buy in. It's no use us running, for example, a virtual training course and no one pitches up. So we really need people to help us spread the word and to get involved, because we want as many people as possible to benefit from this project. I've mentioned a lot, what we hope to do in future. Some of these are community involvement through training and education. In a lot of our workshops last week, children came up as a stakeholder group that we haven't targeted as part of this project. It'll definitely be a worthwhile focus, getting the younger generation connected to nature through birds. And there's a couple of seed projects already on the ground in the garden route being run by individuals and NGOs that we're definitely keen on helping with. I mentioned job creation. We're very keen on helping to facilitate joint marketing campaigns. So it's always better if we can all amplify through our own networks different messaging. And if we're going to be getting the garden route on the map, I think we all need to engage our audiences in a coordinated way It's something we're hoping the local tourism officers, for instance, can help to facilitate. Birding routes is one option. There's been some efforts around this in places like Heidelberg and Ladysmith already, Plett as well. So we can help to sort of put those on the map and get them funded, hopefully in future, if we can spec out a plan for those. Infrastructure, I mentioned bird hides. There might be other infrastructure as well that you think would really add to the AV tourism experience. Again, we're looking for quite specific suggestions of places and specifications. Then lastly, maybe in the longer term, even having a local training and tourism hub in the garden route, specifically for birding tourism. So this could be a site for our community work. It could be an information center for birders visiting the area. It could be a central location for promoting the area. So that's another thing that is on our horizons, at least for that Output 6 report. And then there's been a lot of appetite from people in neighboring areas who've sniffed this project, and they've heard whispers on the wind about what's going to be happening in the garden route, and they're just all too keen to have something similar happen. So we've had people from Overberg, from the Tsitsikamma, from the Eastern Cape, from the Greater Karoo as well, just over the Swartberg Mountains, for similar work. So hopefully if we can really prove that this works through the garden route, which is just such a perfect destination to pilot this, then we can replicate, within the local context and get these other places on the map. And again, this is not to create competition for the garden route, but to create a synergistic corridor of tourism, AV tourism specifically. There could be a long-term vision of extending this birding area from Cape Town to somewhere like East London or PE, because there are fantastic opportunities to be had. So just to conclude then, there are incredible AV tourism assets in the garden route in Klein Karoo. Unfortunately, they're not being made the most use of because of a lack of awareness and profile on the supply and demand side. However, there is a strong supporting infrastructure and economy, and the ground is fertile for this work. We are hoping to equip local people and businesses to gear up for AV tourism and to begin starting to attract visitors and raising the market profile. We'll use our brand as BirdLife South Africa, our local bird clubs, and our local stakeholders to amplify that message. And we're hoping to build on this work both in the garden route and in other areas. So that's my presentation. These are our contact details. We will be contacting you after the workshop as well, so we'll give those to you very shortly. If you'd like to take a photograph of the screen or something like that, you can do that now if you want to just get this down. I'm now going to invite Roland, who is our co-partner at In Toto Retreat in Sedgefield, to have a word from his side as a local stakeholder and as a project partner. So Roland, if you'd like to.
Great, Andrew. Thanks very much for that comprehensive overview. It's always good, even though I've heard it now a few times. It's always really good to hear it articulated in the way that you're able to. So that's really good. I'm looking forward to further engagements just on the Q&A chat, and as mentioned, Andrew will then be able to respond to those. So please keep those rolling. Just from my side, we are a new guest house in the garden route. We only opened last year in October, and as Andrew mentioned, I have worked previously with Andrew on projects in a previous job that I was working on in the transfrontier conservation areas in the region. And we just felt that birding is a great target audience and market potentially for us as a guest house. And it's always important to also have very clear opportunities for private sector tourism operators to be able to collaborate with each other amongst themselves, as well as with a diversity of local stakeholders like conservation agencies and the public. And I think that's also come through quite strongly in the attendance of our first set of Avitourism workshops. As Andrew mentioned, we've had a great turnout from conservation agencies and NGOs, from the public through largely the bird clubs, but also unaffiliated individuals that are just keen birders or are interested to know what this project is about. And so it's been really encouraging to be able to be part of initiating this process and building on a lot of initiatives that are already underway. I mean, just in the last couple of weeks, as we've been preparing the implementation, we're just hearing about a whole lot of initiatives that already are happening, and that this can really just add a little bit of extra impetus. So we really are excited about the connections that we've made and the inputs that we've received so far. And I think again, we've and Leila, great that you're on the call. We're representing the two beds operators currently profiled, and there is a small cost to that in terms of an annual contribution, but we see it more also as part of our membership of BirdLife South Africa and our commitment to work together and support the work of BirdLife South Africa, just because the conservation of birds and the preservation of our natural habitats is such an important aspect for the sustainable development of our destinations. So we really see this investment as part of that responsibility, and not necessarily what kind of bums are we going to be getting into our beds in the immediate term. So we look forward to partnering a whole lot of other activity and accommodation operators across the garden route to join hands and really work with BirdLife SA and the conservation organizations like the Biosphere Reserves and Sandparks and Cape Nature, and WESA and a whole lot of others. So really looking forward to this journey going forward. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, great. So the idea now is that we take questions from you, we have inputs from you. Obviously, this is a bit more difficult over a virtual platform with a chat box and a Q&A box to use as our modes of communication. I do see there are already 3 questions in the Q&A box, so hopefully there'll be a few more, or unless we were crystal clear and there's nothing to clarify. But I do have some general suggested points of discussion, I guess you could call them, that might just spur a little bit of thinking. So I'll run through them now, but that's not to say that our discussion or questions need to be pertinent to any of these. It's just to get those brain cells firing. So who are the important local stakeholders in your area, and who haven't we contacted that we should be in contact with? Which specific sites should we be aware of that we are missing? What local initiatives can we help to support and promote in the area? What local needs have we overlooked or not addressed in this project? What local risks, challenges, and opportunities might we have overlooked? What would you like to see in future development projects? Again, bearing in mind that we would prefer you to be specific about needs. And then how can we ensure the sustainability of this work? Okay. So I'll start at least with the questions that are in the Q&A box, and while the rest of you are percolating with all that information, maybe some other ones come up. So thanks, Peter, for popping these through while I was chatting. The first question is around the seasonality of bird watching. It's a challenge when one wants to retain community guides or find revenue streams from birding when it's out of season. When people spend money on a birding tour, they do have the expectation of sightings, which obviously then can't be guaranteed throughout the year. Yeah, so it's a very good point, and it's something that is front of mind. We, with our community guides, have obviously seen this, and you need to be able to diversify and be adaptable. So certainly birding is seasonal. Tourism is seasonal as well. So you just have fewer tourists passing through the garden route and Klein Karoo in winter, just because that Cape winter is renowned for being a bit more inhospitable. Summers are very popular, however. So you do need to make the most of it while make hay while the sun shines, literally. But you do need to also then in the down months have other opportunities that you are making. So birding is good year round in the Klein Karoo and garden route. Obviously your migrants leave and birds might not be breeding and might not be as vocal, and the conditions might be a bit tougher. But that's not to say that the birds aren't around. A lot of the endemic birds that are found in the area are found there year round. So being able to know where to look for these birds in the off season and how to promote yourself with that in mind helps. But then, as I keep referring to this layer on top of other forms of tourism. So birding shouldn't be your only source of income, is basically the bottom line. So again, we found this with our community guides, and COVID's taught us not to put all of your eggs in one basket. So we do have a proposal to train community guides in the garden route, but that is then backed up with secondary involvements in environmental monitoring and environmental education. So actually getting these guides a little bit of income using their transferable skills and their environmental knowledge to then use that towards research and towards educating youngsters in the off season, and also just in the on season when they can. So working with local stakeholders to integrate them into that. So that is sort of my suggestion is either you are already involved in other types of tourism. I know Anthony's on this call. He does a lot of hiking. Birding in the in-season might be something that he does specifically, running birding tours. But in off-season, he can still take people hiking when it's not rainy and too windy. But yes, great question. Thank you for asking that. And if there are any other suggestions with combating that challenge of seasonality, I'm all ears for that. So thank you for that. Then there's another question from Peter around I'll just read it out. Is the focus of the effort to attract overseas visitors and locals? I read a report from an academic at a Cape University who found that locals are not big money spenders. Okay, so firstly, I mean, I'd love to read that resource you're referring to, because the study specifically on Avitourism showed that actually more than half of the spend in the Avitourism market was from locals. So internationals, there are obviously just fewer of them, but they do spend more than locals, certainly. But in terms of your volume of tourists, your locals actually make up a larger percentage of that. And with your seasonal influxes into the Garden Route district from north in the country, the valleys, like where I'm currently situated, although I'm a Cape Town boy at heart and by upbringing, they do move in, and they are a very rich market of people who are interested in nature type experiences. I mean, that is ultimately why they're escaping the big city and coming down to your areas. So they are a rich source of income that should be made use of. So I don't think that we need to focus exclusively on either internationals or locals. I think both are valuable. And also, I don't think a local may stay in a lower cost per night accommodation, for instance. They may not need a guide. They may go out just on their own and use the areas, but they're still having to feed themselves. They're still having to use local facilities. So they're still injecting money into the local economy. It may not be into the same avenues as your international guests, but they're still certainly adding in their own way. And like I said, there are a lot more of them. There's also, I think, a bit of an underappreciated aspect here of local tourists. So for instance, someone going from George to go birding in Still Bay and then going home at night is still an AV tourist. They're still going to be, exploring that area and talking about it to their friends at the braai, on social media, and advertising that. So there are sort of non-costed advantages to having local birders visiting as well. So that also needs to be factored in when we're trying to build the local market. So thank you for that question. There's a last one from Peter about having a bird rating for lodges and hotels if they meet certain bird life criteria. So it's not so much a rating, but those that do sign up with BirdLife South Africa as a recommended accommodation, they used to be called birder-friendly establishments. We've now changed that to BirdLife South Africa recommended accommodations. They are able to use our logo, so the BirdLife recommended logo on their websites, on their media, on their collateral that they're putting out, whether it's brochures or whatever. So that is very recognizable in the birding community, both locally and internationally through that BirdLife family. That brand has a very good visibility and recognizability. So that does give you a sort of stamp of approval of this is recommended by BirdLife South Africa. And that's how we've set up that, that relationship. The application process does include a certain number of criteria that you'll have to meet, or at least you have to meet some of them around, you know, what can you offer the birding client. So yeah, I think that covers that. You're welcome to ask the question again in a different way if I haven't really addressed what you were asking. So Francois asking about the availability of material. Is there an accessible database of graphic material that can be used without treading on copyright toes? So I think in your area, Ashton Montague, the birds that are there will be covered by the database that the Cape Bird Club has. So the Cape Bird Club website, I can't remember if it's capebirdclub.coza or another URL, but just pop it into Google and it'll come up. They have a database of photographs which is set up for exactly this. So their photographs are not copyrighted. They do ask you to credit the photographer, but you are welcome to use them commercially or non-commercially. It's an open license essentially. So do head on to the Cape Bird Club photo database. You'll have photographs of every single bird in the Western Cape has at least one photograph listed. Some species have multiple photographs. So yeah, then you don't have to worry about copyright. I'd say that's the best way to go about it. All right. Hindi Grobelaar. I see there's a birding site listed on your site at Grootmond. However, there is no bird club. I think this is our first step to establish one. I have no idea how to start. Any suggestions? All right. So yeah, Grootmond is a fairly active area, and there are a couple of birders around. So if there's a way to get those people together onto a WhatsApp group or something, that is a start. But it often just takes some chance meeting of birders in the field. One place to start might be on the Mossel Bay birding group WhatsApp group, and I can send you a link to that if you'd like. I've just joined it myself. There are quite a few birders from that area who've just joined because there isn't a local one for Grootmond area. So that may be, you know, one option for you. And then putting a message on there and saying, is anyone interested in partnering with us and getting this off the ground? But getting a birding club up and running is the first step, is just gathering birders together and uniting everyone around a common cause. It's a difficult one to do. I see your number there, Hendy, so I'm just going to copy that down. Just give me a second and I will make a note there just to send that to you. Okay, great. All right, let me go back to where I was. So Q&A box, there we go. All right, so I think that actually covers it for the questions there. There's something in the chat box. Okay, yeah, if we can put these in the Q&A box, it'll make sure I don't miss it. But Ethan says, hello, Andrew, Roland, and everyone. My question is, how can we join the Go Birding platform? I think Karoo would be a great birding site as well as an accommodation. I agree. I personally would also like to join the bird guide training sessions because I also conduct guided walks and tours on the reserve. Yeah, so you are more than welcome to join the virtual training. You're also very welcome to invite any of your other local guides or staff at Karoo to be a part of that. Maybe it's something you can arrange for everyone to sit around a screen or something like that, because we do want as many people as possible to join. In terms of becoming a birding site or an accommodation, so I'll send around to everyone who attends this workshop the links for that. So the online application form is just a URL that you'll head to and submit your application. The birding site, I will supply the blank template, so it has all of those, the header, some photographs, the contact details, the key species, the birding site information, and the birding information, which someone will just have to fill in from that side. But it does give you a guide of the kind of style of writing that we need, and the naming protocols and things like that. So I'll send you the template that has all that information so that we can get Gerikwa up on the Go Birding map and get people coming to visit. Nikki Thava, I hope I've pronounced that right. She's asked if this is being recorded. Absolutely, it is. So this will be sent around to whoever attends. It'll also be put out on a press release, and yeah, we'll send you the link for this. No worries. It might just take about 24 hours for us to get it up onto YouTube. So it'll be on the BirdLife South Africa YouTube channel. If you're impatient, you can keep checking the YouTube channel and see if it's up. Otherwise, wait for the link to come through. Thanks for that question. Layla asking, is there anyone in BirdLife who's specializing in ecotourism and regulating the sector? So in BirdLife, I am the only person involved in tourism, so it's me. The rest of the organization essentially works on conservation projects. So I have my very niche little corner of the organization. I'm quite different in terms of what I do to my colleagues. I'm the only person working on tourism. So if you have questions around that, I don't regulate the sector. I mean, that's not our mandate, but I do engage often with national and local and provincial government on this kind of thing. And as you will know, the Western Cape government is sponsoring this project, so they have a vested interest in birding tourism. So they would be interested in what you have to say and what your questions are. So if there's something specific you'd like to discuss, just get in touch with me offline and we can take that forward. All right, so those are all the questions in the Q&A box. I'll give people a couple more seconds just to pop something in there, or pop something in the chat box if you'd like, because the activity's died down there a bit. But other than that, Roland, I don't know if there was anything else you wanted to add at this point before we close, or yeah, maybe I'll just give you an opportunity to come on if you're still there. I'm not sure if we lost Roland. Oh, no, there he is.
No, I'm here, and I think that's covered. There were some great inputs there from colleagues on the call, and it's really this is really just a series of introductory or inception sessions, and we're very keen to keep engaging on all of the different outputs. There's a lot to absorb in one session, so we will be sending further information on the project document, which is a 6-page outline, which is a useful read just as a recap, and each of these different output activities will then be able to also share and engage specifically with you on that. Andrew's prepared a great summary email with clear steps forward on each of the different outputs, so each one can really just see where they'd like to plug in and participate and contribute. So yeah, that's really cool, and we really look forward to staying in touch. We have also started developing a project database for further communication, so we will certainly be keeping you in the loop, and we are wanting to really keep this project top of mind across the whole of the garden route in Klein Karoo on many different media channels, also so that we can reach the broad public, as well as all the different sectors and interest groups and tourism operators and businesses. If you can also support and assist us with identifying different platforms or different newsletters or social media sites, or even posting information that is coming through on BirdLife platforms, etc. We really welcome each of you, also assisting us in amplifying what this is about. And it is a 6-month project, but we really are hoping that in this 6-month period that we create very strong linkages amongst each other at a local level and also at the destination level, so that we can also make sure that there's momentum built, as well as sustainable continuation of the project. So thanks.
Awesome, thanks, Roland. Really nice summary. So there's one last question from Leila asking about, are there any junior bird clubs in the country? So yes, there are a few that have been set up. If you'd like, I can put you in touch with some of the people that established those. There's one person in particular, Priscilla Beaton, who is active in the Cape Bird Club, and she has been involved in junior bird clubs and getting young people interested in birding for a very long time. In fact, she won an award yesterday for those efforts. So if you'd like, I can put you in touch, no problem. Okay, so that's it. I'm really keen to continue this conversation with each of you and to be working in your wonderful part of the world. Thank you for attending. Thank you for putting up your hand to be a stakeholder. Like Roland said, we'll be in touch, and really look forward to working with each of you. So yes, yeah, you're welcome to get in touch with me at any point. Again, I'll put up my contact details as well as Roland's. And just to echo what he said, if there are people that you think would be interested in this project, would like to keep up to date with what we're doing, please do send on their contact details or put them in touch with us as well, and we'll add them to our database so we can make the circle bigger. Great, everyone. Thank you so much.